What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Turnbuckle Topics podcast. I'm your host, Pat Deneen, and this is my preview for the 2024 Royal Rumble taking place later tonight in St. Petersburg, Florida at Tropicana Field. Now, this is the third time that the Royal Rumble will be taking place in the Tampa area. Of course, the first time being 1995. The last time they had a live audience, 2021, during COVID Thunderdome era. I remember the winners were both Bianca Belair and Edge for their respective Royal Rumble matches. That was a good one. They did the best they could without an audience. Obviously, it's never the same. But tonight, thankfully, we won't have to worry about that. It will be a packed house at Tropicana Field. And surprisingly enough, I can't remember the last time, if ever, a Royal Rumble or any WWE Premium Live event only had four matches on the card. But I guess it's quality over quantity, and I'm okay with that. Now we have the women's Royal Rumble match, of course, the 30-woman Royal Rumble match taking place for a championship opportunity at WrestleMania 40 in Philadelphia come April. Same goes for the men's traditional 30-man Royal Rumble match for a world championship opportunity again in Philly early April. And the other two matches, the United States Championship match featuring Logan Paul defending his title against Kevin Owens, and of course the fatal four-way match, Roman Reigns defending his undisputed WWE Universal Championship against the likes of Randy Orton, AJ Styles, and LA Knight. So it's shaping up to be a good night. We have a lot to talk about. I really want to break down both the men's and women's Royal Rumble match from start to finish. So I want to start off with the United States Championship match, followed by the Undisputed Universal Championship, get those two title matches out of the way so we could really take our time as far as potential entrants and so on, results, outcomes for both the men's and the women's matches. Now, we got some interesting news earlier Saturday from WrestleOps via Twitter. Now, the proposed match order for tonight's Royal Rumble is as follows. It's going to start off with the women's Royal Rumble match. Opposite of last year, if you remember, 2023 started right off, which caught most of us by surprise with the men's Royal Rumble match. But this year, it looks like we're going to see the women's Royal Rumble match first, followed by the fatal four-way for the Undisputed Universal Championship. Very interesting. Then it says Logan Paul versus Kevin Owens for the United States Championship. And then last but certainly not least, in the main event, the men's Royal Rumble match. So I don't know how much validity there is to this list that I stumbled upon Saturday morning. WrestleOps is usually pretty good as far as I can recall with given news here. So we'll see if that's it. The women's match, the Fatal Four Way, the U.S. title, and then the men's Royal Rumble match. I love seeing the men's Royal Rumble match spotlighted at the very end. I think that's a good look. So there you have it. So let's get to these first two title matches first, and then again, we will break down the Royal Rumble matches for the men and the women. I want to start off here with the United States Championship match, Logan Paul defending against Kevin Owens. This has been fun the last couple of weeks, seeing these two go back and forth, whether it's via social media, whether it's in person, on SmackDown and such. Kevin Owens is great. He's funny. Logan Paul, he's got quite the personality and following too, as we all know. But simply put, I think Logan Paul is going to retain here. Logan Paul gets the victory. He waltzes right into WrestleMania 40 in Philly, where I do think he will drop the title to who? I'm not sure. If it were up to me, I'd say probably a guy like LA Knight, but I do think Logan Paul makes it out of the Royal Rumble. And if I'm not mistaken, I know he won this title at Crown Jewel, I want to say, against Rey Mysterio back in early November. This may be his first title defense. I could be wrong, but I do think that is the case. So that's just how I see things as far as the United States Championship match is concerned. Moving on to the Fatal Four-Way here. Roman Reigns defending his undisputed WWE Universal Championship, again, against Randy Orton, AJ Styles, and LA Knight. I think most of us have every reason to believe that Roman Reigns is going to retain here, and not just because he's been champion for the better part of 3.5 years, but because of the potential matchups that he could have at WrestleMania. Now, one of the matchups, potentially against The Rock, doesn't necessarily need the title. We all know that. But I just don't see him losing at the Rumble. I really don't. Of course, if he is to defend against the likes of a Cody Rhodes, Roman Cody Part 2, the last one, obviously, where Roman found a way to win last year due to some outside interference, per usual, at WrestleMania 39, where everybody thought Cody was going to finish his story. And now, will Cody finish his story at this WrestleMania? That's for another day. We'll see what happens at the Rumble. But anyway, if anybody outside of Roman Reigns is to win, I don't see it being AJ Styles. I certainly don't see it being LA Knight. If somebody else wins, I could see it being the Viper Randy Orton. I'd love to see Randy Orton win here, become a 15-time WWE champion, as he alluded to last night on SmackDown. So that would be great. If Randy Orton finds a way to win, I'm here for it. But I don't see that happening. And so I'm going to go with and still. Undisputed WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns. I see both champions retaining, as I mentioned, Logan Paul retaining his U.S. title, and both of them most definitely Roman and Logan walking into WrestleMania 40 as said champion. So now let's make our way over to the Women's Royal Rumble match. We know there are 10 women that are confirmed to be in this match, which I like, even though it's one third. It's less than we usually know this time of year for the men and for the women. We know less than 20 that are involved in the men's, which we'll get to after this. And so I like that. Leave some element of surprise for the majority or the rest of the competitors. So for the 10 women that are confirmed for this match, we have Becky Lynch, Nia Jax, Bayley, Bianca Belair, Alba Fire, Isla Dawn, Ivy Nile, Mishin, Zelina Vega, and Maxine Dupree. So that's, again, one third of the matchup, 30 participants, 10 have already been, set in stone. Now here's where we, try to figure out who's going to be in this match. So I'm going to go with Jade Cargill. We've been waiting to see Jade Cargill making her way over from AEW, the longest reigning TBS champion over there. And she's had quite a career over there. Only, 2 losses, suffered to Chris Statlander, where she lost the title last May at Double or Nothing, and then had that rematch in the early fall. I believe it was on Rampage, her final match with the company. And so she signed with WWE earlier this fall. It's been the better part of 4 months now. She's been training a whole heck of a lot in the PC. And so I think it's time. We see Jade Cargill make her debut. And at what better place? The Royal Rumble. I'm sure she's going to get many eliminations. I certainly don't think she's going to win it. But I think she'll have a significant amount of eliminations at the Royal Rumble. She'll show that she is a force to be reckoned with for sure. Now, outside of Jade Cargill, I'm going to go with Candice LeRae, Indy Hartwell, Chelsea Green, Piper Niven. I could also see Asuka and Kairi Sane in this Rumble. As far as, when I get to my winner, I think it would only help her chances, or maybe not. But being that they just won the women's tag team titles last night on SmackDown, I don't know if they're going to pencil in these 2 women, namely because they're already champions in some sense of the word. So maybe instead of Asuka and Kairi, we potentially get Kaden Carter and Katana Chance in their place since they had dropped their titles. So we'll see about that. Now, I do see one of the returns being Liv Morgan. I think she'll be returning tonight. I also see Natalya, Zoe Stark, Shayna Baszler. I also see, Shotzi. Actually, come to think of it, I think Shotzi was also one of the confirmed names as well. So that would be 11 women that are confirmed. I believe Shotzi was one of the names mentioned as well. So she's definitely in it. Her former tag team partner will be in it, Tegan Knox. I'm going to say Xia Li, B-Fab. And then this is where things get interesting. These final, I want to say 5 spots or so is, from my standpoint, going to be a couple of women from NXT, a couple of surprises, and potential returns. Now, I could see Naomi returning. She recently, as of, a week or 2 ago, dropped her championship at TNA Hard to Kill, losing to Jordan Grace. It was said she was wrapping up there with her last few matches with them. And so Trinity could be returning to the company since it's been, a year and a half since Sasha Banks and her walked out. So I see Naomi returning. I could also see potentially Maurice being a surprise. That name has been mentioned. So I see Naomi, Maurice. Now, as far as NXT is concerned, there are 2 names specifically that I could see. Now, last year, the 2 women that came up for the Royal Rumble from NXT were Roxanne Perez and Zoe Stark. And this year, I'm going to go with Tiffany Stratton and Elektra Lopez. We haven't seen Tiffany Stratton on NXT television the last couple of weeks, namely in that number 1 contenders Battle Royale, that 20-woman match a couple of weeks ago on NXT, again, to become number 1 contender for the NXT Women's Championship that Lyra Valkyria holds. The winner of that match ended up being Roxanne Perez, who ironically was in the Rumble last year, and they're set for Vengeance Day, February 4th. So I see Tiffany Stratton being positioned in the Rumble here and potentially showing up on Raw or SmackDown on a permanent basis. Now, the other woman that I see coming from NXT to the Royal Rumble is Elektra Lopez. This was going to be one of my potential picks from NXT regardless. But now I certainly think we will see her, being that she debuted on SmackDown last night, yanking down Zelina Vega from the apron, taking her out, fellow LWO member, and rejoining Santos Escobar and Legado, the new Legado del Fantasma. So I'd love to see that. Again, I would love to see an interaction between Zelina Vega and Elektra Lopez tonight in that Rumble match. So that would be good. And yeah, I think that pretty much sums up who I have. And I think there is one other spot left open. And this may be a long shot, but I am going to go with CM Punk's wife. I'm going to go with AJ Lee returning at the Royal Rumble. Again, she's been away from the company the better part of 9, almost 10 years. Shortly after CM Punk left, Punk has been gone, for the better part of 10 years, obviously returning at the end of Survivor Series this past November. But the last Royal Rumble that Punk participated in, and his last time on WWE television prior to his return at Survivor Series this past November, was Royal Rumble 2014 when he was wrongly eliminated by Kane. And come to think of it, I think he was the first entrant in that Royal Rumble match, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see here. I know I have the notes right here. Yeah, CM Punk was the first entrant, ironically enough. And Seth Rollins was number 2. Cody Rhodes was number 4. So look at that. I find that to be very interesting. So anyway, would love to see AJ Lee. And so that's pretty much my list of surprises, NXT returns, you name it. Now, there are some notable names that I did not mention. Raquel Rodriguez, I believe she's still dealing with some health issues. Dakota Kai, she could be back for this Rumble. She should be back sometime soon, even though she's been on TV the past few months. She's been nursing an injury. It was said months ago when she came back to television, just with Damage Control, that she would be returning around sometime, possibly January, around the Rumble. So maybe we see Dakota Kai. Now, Tamina Snuka, she could also very well be in this Rumble, although I'm not listing her to be in it. And now Alexa Bliss and Carmella, who both gave birth to children, I want to say in early November. So again, their kids being just a couple of months old. And I guess depending how they're doing, I'm not so sure that they're going to be jumping into the Royal Rumble match. So we'll see. That's why I did not mention Alexa or Carmella as well. And Sonya Deville, right? She went out July 28th with a torn ACL, said to miss at least, said it was pretty gruesome. Said she was going to miss at least 9 to possibly 10 months. And, it's damn near 6 months to the day, unless she made some kind of a miraculous, speedy recovery. I don't expect to see Sonya Deville in this match either. So we'll see what happens with that. Last year, as far as surprise returns went, by the way, if you think of Chelsea Green, Nia Jax, those were 2 surprises, both coming back to the company. And also a big surprise last year was Michelle McCool. She was also like the only former legend or diva or you name it. And the NXT list, I told you Tiffany Stratton and Elektra Lopez are my 2 picks. I did have 3 other names to follow that I could see in this kind of a Rumble match. Kiana James, Lash Legend, Blair Davenport. I think all 3 would fare very well, although I'm not going with them. Again, going with Tiffany, going with Elektra. And I guess last but certainly not least, before I get over to this men's Royal Rumble match, before I give you my pick and prediction who I think is going to win it, Sasha Banks, right? Everybody says, they're hoping to see Sasha Banks return tonight too, possibly Sasha and Naomi. That would be a huge deal. Look, I'm not going to rule it out completely. I have a strong feeling that Sasha is not returning tonight. She's certainly not on my list, as I mentioned. But hey, look, if Sasha Banks is back, welcome her with open arms. That'd be great to see her back with WWE. Again, it's been a year and a half since she left and walked out with Naomi, May 2022. And so that is pretty much that. Now, speaking of Sasha Banks, I do have her best friend, her real life best friend, winning this match. And I have Bayley winning the Women's Royal Rumble. It's a huge deal. I do think she seeks out a fellow Damage Control member in Io Sky for her WrestleMania match, or her championship opportunity. And I think I know that will be a big deal. So I'm going to go with Bayley, and we'll see what happens with that. Regardless if Sasha's there or not to help her out, I think Bayley gets the job done. Now, a little history here. I got to mention it. Of course, she was a pioneer, certainly a big part of the women's division many years ago. China. This past week marked 25 years since China made history by becoming the first woman in WWE to enter the Royal Rumble match. Now, of course, back then, they only had the men's Royal Rumble match, right? It wasn't until 2018 until we saw the first women's Royal Rumble match. Winner was Asuka. That was a big night in Philadelphia, ironically enough. Ronda Rousey made her debut with the company, and so on. So she paved the path for many women. And even after China, many years later, I believe Beth Phoenix entered the men's Royal Rumble as well. And a few years ago, even, I want to say Nia Jax also appeared in the Royal Rumble match for the men. So I had to give China a shout out, of course. And before I hop over to this men's Royal Rumble match, Rhea Ripley this week. I want to say it was as recent as this Friday. Rhea Ripley has officially surpassed 300 days as WWE Women's World Champion. Personally, I think it's been a pretty solid reign. Now, early on in that reign, not only did she not defend the title all that much, but some of the opponents were very questionable. It was like, when are we going to get a real juicy feud for Rhea on Monday Night Raw? And it's picked up. Business has picked up the last few months, so I'll give her that. And I think whoever she is to face at WrestleMania 40, who I personally believe will be Becky Lynch. Again, I see Bayley winning the Rumble. Perhaps Becky Lynch either wins an Elimination Chamber match or somehow finds a number one contendership officially to go up against Rhea. But I think Becky Rhea would be great at WrestleMania, that's for sure. So let's hop over to this men's Royal Rumble match. Got a lot to discuss here, much like we did for the women. Now, the women had 10 or 11 confirmed names for the Royal Rumble match. For the men, as of this very moment in time, Cody Rhodes, CM Punk, Gunther, Shinsuke Nakamura, Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre, Damian Priest, which a lot of us are questioning. Why is he even in the Rumble? He already has the best prize in the business, the Money in the Bank briefcase, that he could cash in up till this, early July or so, whether it is against a Roman or a Seth or whatever. So that's a bit of a head scratcher. But Damian Priest is in it. With all that being said, Kofi Kingston as well, Santos Escobar, Austin Theory, Grayson Waller, Chad Gable of the Alpha Academy, Akira Tozawa, Carlito, R-Truth, and I think that sums up the list of notable people that are definitely 1000% in the men's Royal Rumble. Now, here are some other names. This was a lot tougher than the women's, a lot more names to choose from on Raw, on SmackDown, on NXT, surprise appearances, returns. So this was tough. Trying to narrow this down to the best of my ability, but this is what I pretty much come up with. So for the remaining 13 spots or so, I'm going to go with Xavier Woods, Finn Balor, and Dominic Mysterio of the Judgment Day. I had to pencil out JD McDonough. I did have all of them in initially. However, I did take out McDonough, just trying to leave room for some others, you know? Oh, and another confirmed name, I believe, for the Royal Rumble match that I meant to make mention of is Jimmy Uso. We found out on Friday Night SmackDown he's definitely in it as well. So in addition to the names I've already mentioned, I'm going to go with Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins of the Street Profits. Going to be in there to help possibly, Bobby Lashley as well, the leader of their little faction they got going on. Certainly, speaking of which, the Final Testament's leader, Karrion Kross, I have him in it. Bronson Reed, that's for sure. I'm going to go with Ivar, one half of the Viking Raiders. He's had a lot of singles opportunities these past few months. Glad to see Triple H and company are really giving him a push, not putting him on the shelf just because Eric's going to be out a while. And got to go with Jey Uso, going to be in this Rumble, right? He's got to be in there if Jimmy is, that's for sure. I'm going to say Ricochet is going to be in this Rumble as well. Oh, and I'm sorry. I think I missed one other. There's just so much to cover. I think there's one other definite for the men's Royal Rumble, and that was Otis. Yes, Otis and Chad Gable, both members of Alpha Academy. Well, all three, really. Akira Tozawa as well. He's part of the group now, too, are said to be in it. So that leaves me with not much as far as potential surprises, returns, NXT, and so on. So as of this very moment, I'm probably not going to put somebody in from NXT, though I did read something very interesting prior to coming on here. And it said the latest regarding Brock Lesnar. Unfortunately, he was alluded to with the whole Vince McMahon mess situation that came out this Thursday in the report. He was potentially supposed to return for the Rumble in WrestleMania season, but this is from PW Insider. As of this morning, Lesnar has not traveled to Florida for this event. The word making the rounds at last night's SmackDown was that Lesnar, who was at one point slated to return for WrestleMania season, would not be at the pay-per-view. The terminology one source used was that Lesnar had been withdrawn from tonight's Royal Rumble, and the belief was that a possible WWE NXT talent would be used in Lesnar's place. Belief is that under the old regime, Vince would have used Lesnar no matter what, which I think we could all agree. Vince doesn't care. But with TKO steering the ship now, they are going to be far more aware of how a Lesnar appearance would come off to the public at this juncture. So obviously a great call by Endeavor, TKO, call what you want, and not having Lesnar there, I don't think that would have boded well for anybody involved. So look, if Lesnar was supposed to be in this Royal Rumble, who I didn't necessarily have on my list of 30 men initially, then he very well may be replaced with the likes of a Braun Breaker, a Carmelo Hayes, or a Trick Williams. I could see one of those three names certainly. Maybe a Baron Corbin. I don't know. Being that he's on NXT, I consider him to be NXT now. So, but he wasn't even on my top three. Again, Braun, Mello, and Trick. We'll see what happens there. But back to wrapping up my list here, and then I'll obviously give you my winner and a couple potential notables who I also could have seen in the Royal Rumble as well, or people that I did not mention that were on the cusp. So as far as returns, I'm definitely going with Andrade. You know, it was said that for the past month or so, his final match was with AEW at World's End, their pay-per-view in Long Island, where he lost to Miro, formerly known as Rusev. And so I basically think they've been holding off for this opportunity for him to return at such an event as the Royal Rumble. It makes sense. It's exciting. It's been the better part of 3 years. And so we'll see what happens. And on a complete side note, I hope that he joins the LWO and kind of becomes their new leader or steps in as a leader. How cool would that be? Andrade reunited with Selena Vega, Cruz del Toro with them, as well as Joaquin Wild, going up against the likes of Legado del Fantasma on SmackDown. Santos Escobar, again, Angel, and Umberto, and their leading lady now, who showed up last night on SmackDown, Elektra Lopez, reunited with Santos and Legado. That would be great. There's a lot of history in every which way. You know, again, Andrade and Selena reuniting. And then for a short time with the LWO, Selena was with Santos. Andrade versus Santos would be amazing. And then if you take it back to 2020, during the Thunderdome era, Selena was with Andrade and Angel and Austin Theory. They had this little faction for a little while. They even, I think, I want to say Angel and Austin Theory were taking a shot at the tag titles at the time when Andrade was the United States champion. So there you have it there. Selena has history with Angel on that side of things too. So it's all very interesting. Again, in short, would love to see Andrade back with Selena and, you know, I guess the leader of LWO. That'd be a lot of fun. And the other surprise I could see, he tried to shoot it down a couple weeks ago when rumors spread wild. He said he's not ready, even if, you know, and so on, that he would not be at the Rumble. But I'm going to go with X-Pac. Big fan of X-Pac, always have been. And I liked him even as the 1-2-3 kid earlier in his career, that big match where he made his name against Razor Ramon. So I would love to see X-Pac return at the Royal Rumble, hear his music hit. Big pop, big excitement over here if we get to hear that tonight at the Rumble. So I'm pretty sure that squares away the 30 men there. Again, there's just so many to choose from. I didn't put in a whole lot of surprises, returns, no plans for NXT, maybe in place of Brock now, as I read that brief article. But I'm still not putting anybody from NXT on the list. Would not be surprised to see one of the names I mentioned, a Braun, Miller, or Trick, because Brock needs a replacement. But there's so many people to choose from. I named 30 people. And so with that being said, I'll give you my winner in one moment. Now, there could be some other potential surprises. It was noted maybe a Matt Cardona, as we said this time last year, we could see, formerly known as Zack Ryder, who's been crushing it the last 3 years on the indies. Potentially he's a free agent now, formerly of AEW, the Perfect 10, Ty Dillinger. When he was at the Rumble 5-6 years ago, big pop for him too, came out of the 10 spot. Everybody was yelling 10, 10, 10. That was his whole gimmick. That would be fun. That would be exciting to see. And as far as potential returns, of course, I mentioned Andrade. That's the only return I really noted. And there's some notable mentions that could also be in this matchup. I want to say I mentioned 30 people. Maybe if I was one or two guys short, then if I'm going to throw somebody in right now, I'd probably throw in a Sheamus or returning Sami Zayn. I could see a Sheamus and Sami Zayn filling in the last few spots if I did not reach 30 initially. But again, some notables that could be on the cusp: JD McDonough, Braun Strowman, both members of Imperium. Well, I'm not sure how Giovanni Vinci's doing. I think he was dealing with some kind of injury, even if it was storyline. Ludwig Kaiser. You have Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa. We could see a returning Rey Mysterio or The Miz. And then, of course, Kevin Owens, Logan Paul. They have a matchup as well. And if, like I mentioned earlier, if the men's Rumble is in the main event, all of those other matches will be done. So let's just say hypothetically that Roman defended successfully, right? Then we could also see LA Knight, Randy Orton, AJ Styles involved. How about Solo Sikoa, right? How about Pete Dunne, Tyler Bate, the Creed brothers? The list goes on. There's so many opportunities. You could have two Royal Rumbles. You could have two separate 30-man Royal Rumbles just on the main roster alone. You wouldn't even have to call up anybody from NXT or really have any surprises, and you could still pull it off. And so that's pretty much that as far as the men's Royal Rumble is concerned. A couple last-minute notes here. The only surprise last year, if you remember, was Booker T. There was not a whole lot of surprises in the men's or women's, and I like that. It also brings a sense of realism. I do like to see people from the past show up, and certainly some call-ups, but I do like to see the sense of realism, even a minimal amount of tag teams, because when do you really see a tag team wrestler make it to the final 3 or 4, or even win the thing, right? To go on to Mania and main event or have a title match. So it's very few and far between, if ever. Now, a little bit of history here. I want to talk about AJ Styles for a minute, who's in that fatal 4-way match 8 years ago today. Well, not to the exact date, but at the Royal Rumble, he debuted. Everybody was shocked. Royal Rumble 2016, hearing the music, seeing AJ Styles. Oh my God, he finally showed up in WWE. Fortunately, still in his prime, even though he had wrestled many years prior to TNA, New Japan, you name it. And so to date, He's had 874 matches in WWE. This is, ironically enough, 66 more matches that he had than during his time with TNA. And he was with TNA for quite some time as well. Not sure exactly how long he was over there, but he was a big part of that company, especially early on. So that's just a whole heck of a lot. So good for AJ Styles. He's had a pretty good run with WWE. And, hopefully for his sake, he can get the job done tonight. I don't see it. Again, I see Roman retaining. If anybody defeats Roman, I see it being Randy Orton becoming a 15-time champion. AJ's a 2-time champion in his own right. And so that's that. I can honestly see AJ or LA Knight being one of the two to take the pin in tonight's matchup. So we'll see how they fare in that one. Let's see if I have any more last-minute notes as far as the Royal Rumble is concerned. Again, I don't see Sasha returning. If she does, great. I know if by some miracle, if they were able to sign Okada and he showed up, the crowd would lose it. Those that are familiar with Okada from New Japan, he was over on TNA a week or two ago, doing some wrestling over there, trying to make the rounds regardless where he ends up, whether it's WWE or AEW. And that's pretty much that. Now, here is something else I got for you guys before we get out of here. Let's take it back to 10 years ago. Again, Royal Rumble 2014. I'm going with CM Punk to win the Royal Rumble this year. I'm going with CM Punk. I'm not going with Cody to go back to back. And if he does, great. He joins a very small elite group of Hulk Hogan, Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold, and Cody Rhodes would be the fourth person to do that. So shout out to Cody if he's able to pull that off. But I'm going to go with CM Punk. I'm fully expecting, even though Seth, is obviously injured and he's dealing with that, grade 2 MCL tear and a torn meniscus, says he'll be all right and he's going to find his way to WrestleMania. He's not going to relinquish that world title. I see CM Punk finding a way to go up against Seth Rollins, night one main event of WrestleMania. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm holding on to. So there's my pick before I go forward. CM Punk to win the Royal Rumble this year. Ironically enough, the last time we saw CM Punk on a WWE televised event was the Royal Rumble 2014, 10 years ago. And he came out at the number 1 spot. Guess who came out at number 2? Seth Rollins. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Cody Rhodes was number 4. And Punk, who eliminated Kane earlier in the match, I believe, ended up eliminating Punk illegally. Obviously, he was already out. Corporate Kane pulled him off the ring apron, and that was that. Now, during this Royal Rumble, Rusev made his debut on the main roster, coming up from NXT as Alexander Rusev. Bray Wyatt, this was his first Rumble, and it happened to be in Philadelphia, where he also, not only is that where WrestleMania is going to be this year, that was where he made his long-awaited, highly anticipated return at Extreme Rules on October 8th, 2022. Came out at the number 5 spot. Now, Luke Harper came out at the number 4 spot, and Eric Rowan came out at the number 6 spot. They had a cool moment together in there where it was just the 3 of them. And I'm not sure how many eliminations Bray had, but he was doing his thing. I know the Boogeyman made his way out as well. And so that was a very fun Royal Rumble to go back and watch. I watched it about a week or two ago, and that was a lot of fun. So there's only 12 men that were in that 2014 Royal Rumble that are still with the company. And that's Roman Reigns, who happened to come out at number 15. It was almost like it was some foreshadowing, because just a year later, he would win the Royal Rumble in Philadelphia in 2015. And the crowd was booing, as you could all remember. And The Rock, ironically enough, made his way out to hold his hand up. But even The Rock couldn't help get Roman over with that Philadelphia crowd. Philly, they're ruthless, man. But outside of Roman Reigns being one of the 12, Kofi Kingston, Big E, Jimmy and Jey Uso, R-Truth, Sheamus, The Miz, Rey Mysterio, CM Punk, Seth Rollins, and last but certainly not least, Cody Rhodes are the 12 still currently with the company that were in that 2014 Royal Rumble. And I'm sure you're wondering who are the other 18. And that goes as follows: Damian Sandow, or some of you remember him as Mizdow, Kane, Rusev, Jack Swagger, Dean Ambrose, Goldust, Dolph Ziggler. A lot of these guys that are now with AEW or TNA. The Great Khali, Fandango, El Torito, Cesaro, Luke Harper, JBL, and Kevin Nash made their returns. Eric Rowan, Ryback, Alberto Del Rio, and Batista, who entered at number 28, who ended up winning that Rumble, eliminating Roman Reigns. And the crowd wasn't too thrilled about that end result either. Most of the match, they were chanting Daniel Bryan. Obviously, Bryan was the favorite to win. Still made his way to WrestleMania 30 in that triple threat, defeating Randy Orton and Batista to become the WWE World Heavyweight Champion, which was great. Now, I know Punk and Reigns were in the Final Four of this match as well. And this was a lot of fun, this one. So that was just some memories I wanted to bring up from 10 years ago, again, namely because that was CM Punk's last Royal Rumble and left the company after that. And here he is returning Royal Rumble 2024, fast forwarding to now. And that's my winner, not just based on nostalgia, but I think that's the right move. I think Cody could still find his way in WrestleMania or at WrestleMania against the Roman Reigns, whether he wins the Elimination Chamber or whatnot. Is he going to finish his story? Not so sure about that. You know, you still have The Rock and that potential, which they may even hold off on The Rock and Roman to do that at a later date as well. But that is my Royal Rumble 2024 predictions, ladies and gentlemen. Gave you all 4 matches. Again, real quick, Women's Royal Rumble, Bayley. Men's Royal Rumble, CM Punk. And still, Undisputed WWE Universal Champion, Roman Reigns. And still, United States Champion, Logan Paul. So I want to thank all of you for tuning in to the Turnbuckle Topics podcast. I'm your host, Pat Deneen. As always, I appreciate you guys. Follow me on social media, pretty much everywhere at Turnbuckle Topics. And subscribe to the YouTube if you have not already. And I hope you guys enjoy the Royal Rumble. Have a great time. And I'll catch you guys on the review. All right. Talk to you soon. Thanks for listening.